Hi and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Enigma. Whether you're listening or watching, welcome back. Please do check out the YouTube channel. We have over 300 videos now for you to enjoy. This episode is powered by good friend and CEO of Red Leadership, Kevin O'Leary, and author of this book, Where the Evidence Takes Us. Now, this is an incredible memoir of a Scotland Yard detective with tales from hostage negotiation and covert operations to commanding the iconic London 2012 Olympics. As leaders, calm, fast decision-making, a fluid leadership style, and a constant human-centered approach. When everything and everyone is in chaos, and trust me, we'll be talking about chaos today, we'll win the day every single day. Check out the show notes for more details of where the evidence takes us. But today's episode, I have been looking forward to this episode. I had to wait until my guest got off a plane from the exotic, I think, Brazil, who's now in the studio here with us in North London. But today's guest stepped into the wild and unpredictable shoes of one of Britain's most iconic comedy characters, which I have on the screen here, Basil Fawlty. Personally chosen by John Cleese himself, my guest Adam Jackson Smith was leading the charge in the West End revival of Fawlty Towers, which I saw. It was incredible. And it was really John Cleese's reimagined version of 3 of your favourite episodes, and we'll get into that. But beyond the laughs and the chaos, and there was some chaos, there's a masterclass in leadership, trust, and performing under pressure. So, how do you carry a comedy legacy, lead a cast, and stay sane in the process? Well, let's find out just after the break. Come back to me very, very soon. Hi, I'm Adam Pacifico, and welcome to the Leadership Enigma, a world-ranked, award-winning podcast that's insatiably curious as regards what leaders do, how they do it, and importantly, why. We'll delve into the human doing, but even deeper into the human being and the power of human-centered leadership to drive sustainable change. So whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, corporate executive, each week we speak to global experts, academics, rising stars, ambitious upstarts and disruptors, as together we will discover that success leaves clues. Adam, it's got a smile on your face with that intro. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. That was very kind, a very generous introduction.
Well, I got excited when I did that particular introduction because, you know, I've known you now for a number of years, and it was super exciting for all of us who know you and have worked with you that you got this particular role. I almost don't know where to start with this, but I'm going to start with this bit. You were personally chosen by John Cleese to play Basil Fawlty, which is probably one of the most iconic comedy characters in this country.
Yeah,
and across the world, let's be honest.
Yeah, all over. I mean, it's big all over Europe, in parts of America as well. It's absolutely huge, and it was amazing. And I had a strange kind of relationship with John in that I met him, 10 years ago when they did the Monty Python live show at the O2. I just left drama school, pretty much just left drama school, and the director got involved and said, "Do you want to step in and be John for the rehearsal process?" So myself and 4 other actors stepped in as the Pythons, and it was so they could do the lighting cues and stuff. So we were in this big place, I think it's out in Hanger Lane, where they rehearse big music concerts, big comedy shows. And we were there for about, I think, a week, maybe 10 days, running through all of the old Python sketches. So we were just 5 actors on stage reading.
That must have been amazing as well, right?
Incredible. And then we went to the O2, we had a few days there setting up, and then the Pythons came in. And so I met John, first of all, basically saying, "Hello, my name's Adam. I've been you for 8 days. Let me show you where you enter the stage at the O2. And he was like, okay, yeah, very good. So that was 10 years ago. And then,
did he remember that you had met?
I think he did eventually, yeah.
Right.
He must have met thousands of people.
I know, right?
Yeah. I mean, he says he did, but who knows?
always the gentleman.
Yeah, exactly.
With that. So, you're going to have to help me. How does this process even work? That you go for something like this, which is so iconic, so high profile, straight into the West End. It was a huge smash.
Yeah.
I came to the show with my wife. We actually very kindly, we met you backstage.
We did.
I think I was a groupie at that point, Adam, which was great. But just help us understand, how does that even happen for an actor?
So it's changed a little bit over the last couple of years, kind of post post-pandemic, I think, because initially, if one were to audition for a play or indeed anything on screen, you would go in, you'd have a meeting. You have an agent. Your agent gets a call from a casting director.
I've always wanted to say that.
Yeah, I have an agent.
Speak to my agent.
Yeah, it's a very lovely thing to say. They'll send out a breakdown for a character.
Yep.
Your agent will put forward you, hopefully, and the casting director will see that and say, "Yeah, we'd love to meet Adam, bring them in."
Right.
Post-pandemic, that's sort of changed a little bit. Everything's kind of gone more online, so it's more a case that you would, in the first instance especially, you would put yourself on tape. So you'd make or you'd record a self-tape.
So do the agents find out about the role first?
Yes.
So a role is created or an idea is formulated, and then it goes out to the agents. Is that right? Okay,
pretty much.
fine.
Yeah. And there are other little avenues, but for the most part, a breakdown will go out. Agents will see it.
Yeah.
They will put forward their clients that they think might be relevant for that particular.
So you've got to have an agent, really, haven't you? Because in some ways they might find these opportunities first.
It certainly helps. Yeah.
Okay.
You will read of instances, certainly in screen, where someone might be cast just in the street if they're looking for a precocious 12-year-old from a particular background that's hard to cast.
Oh, they might go looking.
They might find them in, say, a supermarket or something, and they might take a risk.
Well, we saw something like with adolescents, didn't we? Wasn't
Totally.
the lead boy who was unbelievable?
Yeah, he was incredible.
He wasn't from drama school, was he?
He wasn't, although I think there was something afterwards where he had been doing some kind of, he was part of a drama group, certainly, so he wasn't.
But still a virtual unknown.
And absolutely an unknown,
Okay.
yeah, but had a passion and had some experience doing it. But yeah, sometimes it will happen where you're just plucked. But for the most part, if you're working as a professional actor, you'll have an agent.
Yes.
The role will go out, you'll do it. So in my case, I think, October 2023, I think it was, I was asked to put myself on tape for Basil Fawlty. So
what do you do when that even comes in? Put yourself on tape for consideration as Basil Fawlty.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, my first thought was, I need to get a brown tweed jacket. So I went to a charity shop and found myself a brown tweed jacket.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I thought, probably need a mustache. So I think.
So you grew one.
I grew one with all my strengths. No, I think at the time I had a beard maybe. So yeah. Anyway, so because you have to sort of meet them halfway. So
Yes.
okay, I'm going to make an effort to look a little bit like Basil Fawlty.
Right.
And obviously he's such an iconic figure that you wouldn't want to go in like a polo shirt. And,
Well, he's a tall lad, isn't he, John?
He's 6'4" and a bit, I think.
Right,
I mean,
okay.
I'm 6'1", so I'm not short, but yeah, 6'4".
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
thing about John is as well, he's built. You know, he's, as one gets older, you see people stooping, or they sort of become a little bit more diminutive. John seems to have grown. he's still this huge force of nature.
Okay. So got tweed jacket, mustache.
Yeah, put myself on tape. They sent through 2 scenes, 3 scenes maybe, so I recorded them, sent them off. About a month later.
When you say a scene, what were you recreating?
So like this, you'd have a camera.
Yep.
You facing camera, have someone. I think I had a friend or maybe my partner was reading in the other lines, playing Sybil or playing the Bernard Cribbins role or whatever the scene was that they'd sent through, and you record yourself as we're talking
character.
now, basically in character.
Wow.
As Basil Fawlty.
That must be quite.
It's an interesting experience, and again, the industry's changed quite a lot. But you're in a position now where, as an actor, you don't just turn up and do the job. You sort of have to be a self-filming producer, director,
Yes.
in order to get the job. In many instances, because you have to send out a good tape. It has to be well lit. You have to have you're wearing your mic. You have to do the editing. You have to send this off.
You
to
got
your
one
agent.
shot at this, I'm assuming.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I was invited in to audition in front of the panel. So there was a director, producers, casting director, and I think, if I remember correctly, John himself was in the room as well. I think it was that round.
Where was that? Not in the theatre itself. No.
No, it was in London. It was in a room connected to the Dominion Theatre, just off Tottenham Court Road.
Okay,
So there are these rehearsal spaces, audition spaces all over London, little rooms in churches and.
I've been watching
strange
too much
municipal
television,
buildings.
so I've got this vision now, Adam, that you get there and there's lots of people in the corridor waiting to go in. Is it like that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
frightening in itself.
Being an actor requires resilience, certainly.
And then some.
Yeah, absolutely.
And did everyone have tweed jackets on and a moustache, and
just to
you had a room full of Basil Fawltys.
A room full of Basils, yeah. Everyone looking slightly wild and wide-eyed and chaotic. So in the room, you do the scenes with there's normally an actor in the room, or with the casting director who is taking the place of your mate or your partner.
Yeah.
Do the scenes again, and I just remember John sat on the end just giggling away, like arms crossed as he is in the photo on his belly, just giggling away at obviously lines that he'd written nearly 50 years ago. Well, he and Connie Booth, I should say, had written nearly 50 years ago, which was kind of brilliant and infectious at the same time.
50 years ago, though.
Yeah. 50 years this, I want to say September, I think was the first episode.
And were they just auditioning for the Basil role, or were they auditioning for all the main roles of
I think the day that I was
play?
in it, I think they were the main roles. I think it was Basil, Sybil, Polly and Manuel.
And I should have done this as well. Let's just give people some context about
Sure.
Fawlty Towers. Only 12 episodes.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks there was more.
Yeah.
Only 12 episodes, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Just how big did Fawlty Towers get?
I mean, it was huge. I mean, it was slightly before my time, but it was 1974, I think, was the first series.
And then young man.
Yeah, just get that in there. Oh, God. 1974 was the first series.
Yeah.
And then I think the second series was 1979.
Of
so there
two,
was quite a gap.
6 episodes in each series, right?
6
and
episodes
that was it.
each, and that was it. And John and Connie always maintained that they didn't really have any more ideas, really. They had because there's the famous story of how John and the Pythons were staying in a hotel. I think it was the Glen Eagles Hotel down in Torquay, and they met this bizarre guy who was running this hotel, and John just thought, oh, hang on, there's something in this. So he and Connie went away and wrote this. Initially, they wrote a pilot, put it in front of the BBC, I think, and a few other people, and I don't think it got that much interest to begin with, and then it just exploded. And then
exported across the world.
Yeah, all over the world. It's absolutely iconic and is routinely voted, the number one sitcom in the UK that's ever been made, et cetera, et cetera.
Did he have any idea that that's what he was creating? I mean, I assume not. But did you ever talk to John about whether he realised that he created something with such longevity that was loved globally, and that people would keep coming back to it generation after generation?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to put words in his mouth, but certainly the conversations that we've had, I think it was unexpected.
Right.
I think as well, because he'd come from doing Monty Python, something that was so absurd.
Yeah.
It was a totally different type of humour.
Yes.
And we look at Fawlty Towers now retrospectively and think it's quite, it's what we think of when we think of a sitcom.
Yeah.
It seems quite straightforward, but actually for Cleese at the time, it was something completely different for him to do.
So thinking about it, that switch from the Python,
and
as
so
you say, craziness to...
Yeah, and so people thought maybe he'd stopped sort of being a bit of a risk taker and was doing something more comfortable. Yeah. But actually it was, it's certainly stood the test of time.
It really has. So I went backwards, didn't I? Which I do a lot. So coming back to, so you're in the room, you're auditioning for the lead role. Yep. John is there. What's going through your mind?
Just get the lines right.
That's a good start, isn't it?
They're so iconic.
Yeah,
just don't
I know.
Get the lines
That's
wrong.
the issue.
Yeah.
They are so iconic, aren't they?
Yeah. But also, I mean, and it's great credit to John. He was so good at just creating a very warm environment. And I think he may have said a few times, just don't worry about it. Just...
Well, they want you to be great, don't they? Because he's trying to find the great.
Absolutely. Any audition room you step into, they want you to solve their problem. Absolutely.
Right.
So and it's sometimes difficult to keep that at the forefront of your mind.
So they're trying to set you up for success.
That's all they
rather
want to
than
do.
pressure,
Definitely.
and then don't perform.
And it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
And some people, because people are human beings and they can be, gosh, I've walked into, I don't know why it's always advert castings, but you can walk into an advert casting at 4:30 in the afternoon. They've been in there since 8:30.
Yes.
And they're lying on the sofa and they're just, they're at the absolute end. And it's not the most productive, energetic room to step into.
Is it?
Oh, okay,
There's a lesson there, isn't there? Just in relation to any kind of interview panel or board, setting the person up for success to try and be the best they can be and solve their problems. I think that's a really interesting lesson straight away.
It's a really nice thing to keep in mind if you can. Funnily enough, I think it was years ago. I did some work with Kevin Spacey at the Old Vic,
right?
Who's someone obviously who we have slightly different views of now in 2025. But
Yeah.
as an artist and as someone who was helping younger actors at the time, I had some very sort of interesting lessons from him. But I think he was the first person who said that to me. He was like, when you walk into a room,
Yeah.
they are looking for you to solve their problem.
I love that. So set them up for success
Yeah.
to see the very best of them. Let me ask this question. So what had John and the team chosen as part of the audition? What is it they wanted to see and hear that would allow them to make this decision? Because this is a massive decision for a big West End production.
Well, I should say, so that audition was number 2 of 4, I think. There were 2 more rounds after that.
Right.
So I did that one. There was a panel. I came back, I think I came back a third time, and I was reading with a few other actors. And then the final audition was a bunch of Basils, a bunch of Sybils, a bunch of Pollys, and a bunch of Manuels, and we were all sort of doing a round robin.
Oh, really? So they're comparing and contrasting?
And seeing who would be a good fit with each other. Sometimes in screen auditions, you'll do a chemistry test just to see what that relationship is going to be like.
Okay.
So they were looking for, I suppose, they're always looking to cast a company. So just going back to when I trained at RADA, Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and I remember them saying they were looking for a company of 30, I think it was 34 actors at the time. They're looking for a company. So it's not necessarily the 34 best actors in the room. They want to cast a company. And I think especially for Fawlty Towers, they were looking to cast 18 actors. They wanted to cast a company.
So there's a chemistry to this, isn't there?
There has to be.
Because when I watch the show, there is a chemistry between the characters.
Yeah.
So they're in some ways they're looking at that way before it being built during the show and the rehearsals itself.
Yeah.
Ah, that's interesting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think in any acting job I've done, you remember the good ones, and it's always down to the people, and it's always down to that chemistry.
Yeah.
And you remember the bad ones,
Yes.
and it's down to exactly the same things.
So what was the final stage of being chosen for the lead role?
It was that 4th audition
Yep.
where I was reading in with 5 different Sybils, 5 different Pollys, 5 different Manuels. Wow. And
5 different Basils.
Yes. Yeah. I only saw a couple of them, but yeah. And there were some people that I recognized and people with some profile, I think you would say. And I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Okay.
They could definitely go that way. And John was over in the US, I think, at the time, so he was on Zoom.
Right.
Actually,
just to add to the complexity of
well,
this
that
all.
was the best thing. So I was auditioning with a guy, a brilliant actor called Stephen Mayo, who ended up playing the spoon salesman, the Bernard Cribbins role
Right.
in the Hotel Inspectors.
Yeah.
For people who know that episode, brilliant actor. And I was in the room with him. We were running through a few scenes, and John was just cackling over Zoom. And he said, "Oh, just give it to him, as in Steve." And in the room, everyone was a bit like, because obviously they had other actors that
they have a process.
Yeah,
We have a process,
exactly. But Steve had basically been cast in the room, and Steve and I both looked at each other and were like, "Well, you've got it."
Right. Wow.
And that never happens. But John is, he's his own man.
Yeah.
So he and then I think after that day, I probably heard a week or two later, I got a call from my agent saying they'd like you to do Basil.
Right. Let's just pause at that particular moment.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you got that news? It was you.
It was kind of odd because on the one hand, I was thinking that's amazing. I've gone through 4 rounds of audition. This has been since.
Did you think you would get this, or you generally just didn't know?
If I'm honest, I did. Yeah, I thought, without sounding egotistical at all, I thought that
it worked hard.
I'd done the work, and I thought I was a good fit for the role, and it was something I felt comfortable doing. It's something I thought that I could do well.
Was there a moment you thought, I've nailed this? Or you just, when you hit that purple patch and you just think, oh, I've nailed that.
It's funny because I've had that feeling before in other auditions when you walk out of a room and you think, that was brilliant. I've absolutely nailed that. And you never hear from them again.
That's life. That's life, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But was there a moment where you thought, oh, yeah, I've absolutely got.
There wasn't, actually. There was a moment where I thought, oh, I think I've screwed this.
Oh, really?
Because it was a scene with Manuel and the actor, and it was Hemi, again, a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
I adore him, who ended up playing Manuel. He and I, it was the first time we'd met, and we were running, I think it was the Dragonfly scene.
Yeah.
I Know Nothing.
Right.
And we were both nervous, and we were both going too quickly, and we were both tripping over lines. And I thought, I've screwed this. I just need to slow down and just take the foot off the gas and just kind of relax into it a little bit. And so,
how do you do that though in the moment? There's so much on the line. There's so much pressure. Let's be honest. However welcoming they're making it, this is make or break.
Yeah.
How
absolutely.
do you control that moment for yourself to say, hang on, just come on, get back on track. You can do this.
Sometimes you can't, but I think when you can, it's just having that kind of remembering that you've been in a situation before, remembering that you've done things like this before, remembering
trusting
that
yourself.
you've trained in this,
Yeah.
you can do this. And also, probably the most helpful thing is to get out of your own head. It's actually to think, how can I help my scene partner to make this better? Actually, it's not like, how can I be better in this? It's like, how can I give the scene the space it needs to be funny and to make the audience laugh and to make my partner, to make Manuel more comfortable so that we can both be comfortable together.
So that's kind of how do you make the whole work, not just the individual? How do you provide something that makes everything work? Absolutely.
And from my experience, it's always about the play, or it's always about what you're filming. It has to be. As soon as you start to go inside and you start fretting about, how am I looking on this camera? Should I be, that's when you start to get away from the project and you start to make.
So you get the call.
Trouble.
You are Basil Fawlty.
Yep.
You put the phone down. What's your first thought?
I can repair the roof on the house.
There isn't. I know it's not the easiest of lives, is
and then
it?
my second thought was, this could absolutely bomb. This could be a disaster.
Was that one of your early
totally.
thoughts?
It was, because
see, there's the inner critic that we've all got, right?
absolutely.
So you get probably the news of your life. You're playing one of the most iconic characters anywhere.
Yeah.
And one of your first thoughts is, this could go horribly wrong.
Well, yeah.
So how do you deal with that inner critic, that subtle little voice on the shoulder that's like, you're going to screw this up?
I think you have to listen to them, and you have to sort of counter and be like, this could be a disaster, but also you have to take a risk, don't you? You have to be brave, and you have to scare yourself. You have to do all those things. And also, I mean, the fear was based in that this is such an iconic property. This is beloved by millions of people around the world.
I need to talk to you about that. How do you take on a role that is beloved by millions and do it the justice that the millions want, but also make it your own? I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. Well, I'm not an actor, am I? But where do you start with that level of pressure and expectation?
So I always said that this was a character like any other character I would play. So you would, and I think I've heard you talk about in the past that leadership is an inside-out process, right? So it has to start within.
Yeah, I think you've got to have you've got to have the phase of self-awareness to learn who you are as a leader before you start to lead other people and lead the wider community.
And so whenever I would approach a role, and when I approached Basil, it was very much inside out. So he had to be a real character. He had to be someone who had a past, who had problems, who was living a real life in these situations. It's funny, I have lots of friends who are not actors. And, people joke all the time about, you lie for a living. It's like, no, I don't. I tell the truth for a living in imagined circumstances.
Yeah.
Like that's
in the context of the character.
Exactly. But you have to tell the truth. So to approach Basil, he absolutely had to be living a truthful existence on stage for those 2 hours. He had to be everything. It had to mean something. It had to have value, and something had to be risked. Something had to be lost.
So how do you become Basil Fawlty? Yes, you might grow the moustache, you might wear the appropriate clothing, but as you start to get ready for the West End play, how do you start to really assume the characteristics and the persona?
Well, the first thing
Basil Fawlty.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up watching it as a kid, so I had that resonant.
Well, there was a baseline for you.
Yeah, I knew who he was. I knew what he was about, and it wasn't ever an impersonation because again, it had to be real. It had to be, and for it to be real, it had to be connected to me.
Yes.
The simple things. It was such a physical role. I had to get the old hamstrings going because
that's another question I've got to ask you because that was a physical role.
Yeah, but it was and it's in the brilliance of the writing as well, because of the way that Connie and John had written it.
Yeah.
There are certain speech patterns that are on the paper that there is only a particular way of saying that line, you know, and it's, as it happens, the iconic way that John delivered it in the series.
Yeah.
And there was some play in that, and obviously I'm not John, and I didn't perform Basil as John, but I think there was sort of a middle place where John and I met, and that's where my Basil materialized, I suppose.
Where your Basil materialized.
Exactly.
Was there a part of the show that was a favourite for you? Because it was an amalgam of 3 episodes, wasn't it?
It was.
Just help everyone understand, what were the 3 episodes that John kind of hung this on?
He put together the 3 of his faves. He did the Hotel Inspectors,
yes,
with the famous Bernard Cribbins role. He did Communication Problems with the deaf guest.
Yes.
And he did obviously the Germans.
Yes.
That was, which again was another reason I was slightly fearful of doing, anxious, I suppose, because obviously there was all the stuff around the German episode.
Yeah.
Obviously, when it was put back on the BBC a few years ago, obviously there's language in the original series that has dated, and
50 years old.
Yeah. And there were lots of questions around how would we bring this to the stage.
Yeah.
And it was really straightforward, actually. We just cut the language that you certainly wouldn't use in 2024, 25.
Yeah.
But kept
the essence of it.
The show was, totally. So yeah, prior to going into rehearsals, I was thinking, okay, how's this going to go down? How am I going to stack up to John?
Yes.
And
that's
how's the audience going to, accept this? And I remember when we did, when you bring a show into the West End or into any theatre, you have a period. Obviously, you rehearse it, and we call it. You do like a tech rehearsal, so that's when you're setting all the light settings and the sound cues and entrances and exits. So we're doing that in the Apollo Theatre in the West End. Took us, 4 or 5 days, and halfway through that, and everyone's always knackered because you're early starts, late finishes. Everyone's concentrating. It's always one of those periods that can be quite stressful. Halfway through that tech run, maybe on the Tuesday afternoon or something, we were told that we had this press call, and we were going to run 3 or 4 scenes on stage in front of an invited press corps. So we had people taking photographs, videoing what we were doing. And obviously we're still trying to figure out where our entrances are. Is that light going to be that bright when I come on and stuff? And we had to go in and do these 4 scenes for an invited audience. And that's probably the most stressful, I think, experience that we had, because we hadn't had it in front of an audience yet, really.
Right.
And
how many people was that audience?
It was at least 50, 60.
Okay.
Sort of
so enough to get a
journalists.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're all there doing their jobs, trying to get footage of this show to then go out on the BBC News that night to publicise.
Was this the first time you were, it probably wasn't, but was this the first time that you were presented to the public as the lead role en masse?
Yeah, I think it was, from memory, because it was this photo, in fact. So yeah, it would have been, yeah.
Okay.
But I remember Jonny Vaughan was, for some reason, he was presenting this. He was sort of, introducing us to this audience.
Yeah.
And I remember before we went out to film it, and again, because you're filming it, you've got one shot at this, and it's the first time we're doing it.
Yeah.
He just sort of leant over to me and was like, "Good luck, mate. This is, one of the most iconic characters that's ever been committed to screen. Don't screw it up."
That's almost stating the bleeding obvious, but there's a time and a place, and you're like, I know.
Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah. Wow. But that is the headline. I mean, to be fair, that's exactly what you were taking on.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Yeah. And we did it, and it and we survived to tell the tale, and it went down well. It was a success.
That must give you a real boost for that to go well, and good feedback, good publicity, an energy or an enthusiasm for the show itself.
It felt like we were on the right track, but again, for the first couple of weeks when we were performing, so we opened in May.
Yeah.
Gosh, we opened nearly a year ago today, and I could tell for the first 10 minutes of the show, I would walk out on stage. I would make my first entrance, reading a newspaper, sitting down, and I could tell there would be a bit of movement in the audience, a bit of like, okay, let's see what you got.
There's an element of,
Yeah.
go on then, son, impress me.
Absolutely. And why not? And 10 minutes in, you could feel people would relax. 15 minutes in, people would be delighted.
Yeah.
Their fears had been removed, and they were comfortable and they were laughing.
Yeah.
And it was great. But there was definitely, for those first few weeks, you could feel it was palpable in the
I have
audience.
so many questions, Adam. We could be here for days. Was there a standout piece of advice that you remember John Cleese giving you to play the role in front of the public on the stage? Was there something that you kind of really stuck with you?
From John, he was very generous, and he just said, you'll find your version of Basil, and don't worry about, he basically said, don't worry about what I did. He'll always say
easier said than
said than done for
Yeah.
sure. But he always maintains that he's a writer first and foremost, and that he's delighted watching other people step in and take that.
So he thinks
role
himself a writer before an actor, maybe.
That's what he says now. Yeah.
Wow,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to opening night.
Yep.
Opening night was in the West End.
Yep.
Was that a special night? Was it for the public, or was it VIP? How does this work, Adam?
So
opening night of a big West End
You
production.
preview a show for a few weeks. So the first time we actually performed it in front of an audience was we call it a preview.
Yep.
And it was unlike anything I've ever experienced before.
Oh, go on, do tell.
Totally. I mean, obviously we were sold out for the entire run, which was crazy. But that first night, because obviously we've been doing all this tech run, we're doing all the press, we've been in rehearsals for 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
We think it's good. We think it's going to be a success, but we don't know.
Right.
You step out in front of the audience, you do the show. Everyone's
you just don't know,
nervous,
do you?
It's tense. People are laughing. People are really laughing.
John's there?
John's there. The producers are all there.
Were any of the other originals?
They came. So once you're through previews, then you have your official press night
Yes.
where you invite, celebrities and stuff. And
Okay.
we had Michael Palin and Terry Gilliam came along,
Amazing.
who were brilliant, and a bunch of other people, Reece Shearsmith, Eddie Izzard. But that first preview show, so that was in front of normal paying audience,
Yeah.
and we had the climax of the show, lights out, and there was a beat of absolute silence, and then it just exploded. Lights on, everyone on their feet.
I kind of get goosebumps just listening to this. Adam.
Anything I've ever experienced, and all of us were on stage, all 18 of us looking around, thinking, "I think this is going to be okay."
Wow! So was that the validating point where you just thought, "Oh, we're going to be all right"?
Yeah.
You can flick that little inner critic off your shoulder as well, then, can't you? Okay.
He's always there,
I know.
and he can be healthy.
Oh my!
But it was an experience.
Now, I came and watched the show, and even I was quite nervous because I've grown up and I just thought to myself, probably what Jonny Vaughan said to you, this is such an iconic character, and I know you as well, and I'm thinking, wow, what's this going to be like? And when I saw it, and I'm not just saying this to you, I thought, oh my God, you were born to play this role. And my wife as well said, she went, oh my God. There was genuinely that kind of, born to play the role. As I say, so many questions, Adam. Is there a standout piece of the show for you, though, that when you got to it, you just felt that almost elation of, because it was a very physical production too. Was there a favourite part to the production for you?
I always joke that my favourite part was when I got to sit down, because for most of it, I was just launching myself around the stage, sweating through my costume. And there was one very beautiful moment where Basil sits down and looks out to the audience and just, he just has a very sort of almost reminiscent moment with Sybil, which was quite beautiful because their relationship's quite odd, obviously.
Of course.
Like, they're at each other the whole time. But I quite enjoyed that.
Was there a favourite line in the show as well, which you felt for you was just encapsulated the essence of the whole show, the whole character, and your portrayal of Basil Fawlty? Was there something in there that kind of...
I always say that, so my favourite lines changed all the time, but there was always... I always liked the Major's lines that, that played by Paul Nicholas.
Morning, Fawlty. Again, these are all iconic, aren't they?
Totally.
It's almost like a songwriter where the audience will sing the lyrics back at you.
Yeah. And we had that a
are-
few times. We did have that a few times where you'd have people calling out, especially with Manuel with the "I Know Nothing." It's such an iconic
Right.
line.
Okay.
So you'd have to listen. You'd have to give space for that, which was because I did the show over 300 times, and people would always ask, "God, do you not get bored doing the same thing?" And you have to say, "Well, no, it is totally different every night because you have a completely different audience
Who are seeing it for the
who are
first
seeing it for the
time.
first
That's
time,
the thing,
usually.
right?
And
Yeah.
you have space. You have to give space for laughter, or for if you're not doing a comedy, then to allow your audience to react in any way that they want to. So it's always different. And obviously the actors that you're working with, because it's live every night,
Yes.
you don't know what the guy playing Manuel what sort of day he's had. He
Right.
could have, he could be thinking about all manner of terrible things, or
Yeah.
he could be elated. And that energy brings something different every time.
How do you make sure that you all bring the energy every single time to give that audience an incredible experience?
Yeah, and that is something, because I was thinking about.
Do you do something quite deliberate or practical to get that energy to the level it has to be at before the curtain goes up?
We all generally have a routine that you go through. You eat at a certain time, you get changed, whatever. A very sort of step-by-step process. But I was thinking, because this is the first time that I'd been the number one in the cast, as it were. So I was like top of the call sheet.
Yeah.
I'd not had that
You were the
experience
star.
before. But I'd been in companies where I'd seen leaders react in different ways to being in that company, in that role. So I'd seen some very good examples of number ones, and I'd seen some very poor
So
examples.
let's talk
of
about the
number ones.
good, because I wanted to ask you about how do you, because let's be honest, you're the star of the show. This is the role of the show. So how do you lead that cast while playing such a chaotic character, so that again, to the point, the sum of the parts is absolutely at their best? What was it you deliberately decided to do based on maybe the good role models?
So I got it wrong initially, because I was determined that I'd be a good leader, that I would be as open and as available as I could be to the whole company. So we were 18 actors, but then you've got everyone backstage.
Yes.
You've got the producers, you've got the director, obviously, who plays a really important role in this whole process. But I had resolved to be as good a leader as I could be in that situation. So I tried to be involved in everything. So if there was a problem going on with someone in the company, I would try and solve that problem.
Okay.
Or I would try and make myself available to solve that problem. And we got about 2 months into the run, and I was exhausted.
Well, that's because then you turn yourself into the hero piece, and then you set yourself up for
exactly. But I thought I had to be involved in all of these decisions. I thought I if I could help in any way, then I would help, and I would take. But I ended up taking on a lot of other people's problems that were really nothing to do with me. And
Well, if you keep solving them, then people will keep giving them to you as well.
Yeah,
That's another issue.
Absolutely. And it got to the point where I was like, I can't actually keep going on in this manner. So I had to sort of take a back seat and still be open and still, have my door open for people to come in and like ask stuff, ask if they had any problems. But yeah, I had to kind of look after myself a little bit, because it was such a physical role.
Yes.
You're tired. You're doing a workout 8 times a week. You're doing the press.
So it was 8 shows a week.
Yes, you're doing 8 shows a week.
So how does that work? So you're doing a couple of weekends, and
we were doing, so you do Tuesday through to Saturday, but you do a Wednesday.
So it's dark on a Monday.
Yeah, you do a Wednesday matinee, a Thursday matinee, and a Saturday matinee.
Right.
So the Wednesday, Thursday was brutal, because you'd do 2 shows and then 2 shows straight away afterwards.
Wow.
So that was a lot. I mean, it was a great schedule. If you've got families and stuff, you've got the whole weekend.
Yeah.
It was a lot for me physically in the middle of that week.
Yeah.
So yeah, I learned a lot about leadership within that.
Who was the leader you
environment.
became then? Because you said you got it wrong to start with, and then you made some changes. So what do you think of who was the leader that you became?
I hope I became someone who was available and who was present. I think I was present. I think I hopefully created space in which people could step into if they felt they needed to.
Right.
But at the same time, I think the biggest thing you can do in a company of actors is to lead by example. So I was never late. I was never.
So it's the role modeling piece.
Yeah, absolutely. because I think that's really important. Because I think, especially if you're a younger actor in a company, and we were all about the same age. We'd all been in the business for a while, so we were all pretty responsible. But I think leading by example in that number one role is probably the best thing that you can do.
I mean, you're all peers, aren't you? And you're all highly experienced. But is there a part of people looking to you because you are in the lead role? You are.
Yeah.
Basil Fawlty. So by definition, do you feel that there were a lot of people looking to you as, well, actually, you're the lead of this group?
Yeah. And I think sort of by default.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it was the first time that I'd been in that role. And I thought I was very comfortable with it, and I was ready for it, and I wanted to be good at it. And it was just a little bit of a journey navigating how best to be a leader in that position, because you realize as well, and you know this better than I do, but there are people who it is in fact their job to take on that mantle. Yeah. They are the company manager, they are the stage manager, they all have their particular areas of responsibility, and mine is something very different, you know, and it's funny because as being that number one role, you do sometimes have to advocate for other people, and you do sometimes have to bring different groups together and try and resolve whatever the issue might be. Because, you know, God, being in a theatre can be very stressful. It can be, you know, there's lots of egos. There's lots of
only imagine.
Problems. We were very lucky. We had a very, very happy company. But, you know, I've been in companies in previous years where that hasn't been the case, and things get lost, and people don't really want anything to do with it. They want to rock up, do the gig and go home.
There's the chemistry piece again, isn't it? Does anyone ever warn you that if you're going to get the lead role, you're also going to get this leadership role as well? Or is it just...
No.
That's interesting,
not in my
isn't
experience,
it? So it's not really saying, hey, if you land this, Adam, you know, you are pretty much the leader of the pack, and you are the role model, and people are going to be looking to you or taking their lead from you, no pun intended, of how we behave and how we show up and how we... So that's interesting, isn't it? I haven't really thought of that, but just by the very nature of the role, that was who you had to be. Yeah.
I wonder if also if it's who I chose to try and be, because I've definitely worked with other actors, big actors, who I watched actively step back and actively remove themselves from that number one role. They were definitely the lead in the show,
right?
But they were very much
the lead role, but not the leader.
Yeah, they
see, that's fascinating. You see, and they abdicated essentially that response.
Yeah.
So if they do that, who steps in? It could be anyone else, but someone has got to step in, right? And captain the team.
And in that particular instance, several people tried to step in, and it became a little bit confused. And
so it can create all kinds of issues.
Yeah. It did in that instance.
So live performances, fraught with danger. Was there a night that didn't quite go to plan?
I mean, Paul Nicholas, I love him to death. Yeah. But there were instances where the major would not make it on stage.
Tell me more. What, at all? Or?
Yeah. Well, he would rock up a little later than intended. But and it was brilliant, because obviously there were points where the audience would have no idea what had happened. But myself and Anna Jane Casey, the actress playing Sybil, would be running around trying to find Paul, because obviously the major...
I suppose the chaotic nature of it means you could actually fill the void in some ways.
Yeah.
How are you coping with that when you've got a packed theatre and something is not on the mark? It's not happening as it should.
It's something that you can't plan for. And it's something that you sort of find yourself in the moment. You find the answer in the moment. And it goes back to what I was saying before, where every night is different. Because sometimes if we had one show where there was an audience member right up in the gods who had the most infectious laugh it was just bizarre.
Right.
And they would start laughing about 2 beats after everybody else. And it got to the point where on cast, we were trying not to laugh because we knew this laugh was...
we knew
the laugh was coming.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the audience knew that we were waiting for the laugh. And so when the laugh came...
So that's a dynamic that you just cannot legislate
plan
for
that. No, absolutely no way at all. But it became this really beautiful thing, because obviously the person was just having a lovely time laughing. The audience were waiting for us try not to corpse laughing on stage, and they were laughing at us trying not to laugh, laughing at this person laughing. It was ridiculous, but it was a really beautiful moment that we all shared together.
Did improv ever come into this where something happened or was said and you went off script, but you went with the moment? There was that comedy timing and just there's something had to be done or said in the moment to react to something. I don't know. Did that happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking of one instance. One of the actors, Neil, hilarious. He was supposed to come on with I think a vase, Mrs. Richards' vase, and he was supposed to then pull out her glove with the money in.
Yeah.
And he realised halfway through reaching
in
his pocket,
the money, missing money.
Yeah, he realised halfway through reaching into his pocket that he had forgotten to get the glove with the money. So he sort of stopped, looked at me, and went, "I'll just go and get it from the van." And he legged it off stage. I was just left on stage waiting for Neil to come running back in. Yeah. And I think ad-libbed something. And then
do you remember what you did or said?
Well, I remember he came back in bright red with the money in the glove, sort of shaking, giving it to me. And was like, "Got it from the van, did we? Yep, good." It was just ridiculous. And again, you can see sort of in the wings, everybody waiting to see what's going to happen. You know, how are you going to get out of this one? But we were a pretty tightly drilled little company, so in a show that is chaotic in itself, I think for the most part we got away with it.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation. You did 300 shows.
Just over, I think.
This is a sold out, massive success. Few.
Yep.
Because as you say, because it's so iconic and there was so much riding on it.
Yeah.
And it's weird, isn't it? Because you've got hundreds of thousands of people coming through the show, all of which have got a preconceived idea of what this should be because they've fallen in love with the character 50 years ago. So you inherit that in every single show. But now it came to the end. It was extended originally, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, we extended twice in the end. Yeah.
So extended twice, which is incredible. Did 300 shows, and then you decided that was stop at the top, yes? Just talk us through that decision as well.
So they asked if I would be interested in coming back. So the show's coming back in June.
It switched theatres, hasn't it?
I believe it's coming back to the Apollo for 3 more months, June to September.
Okay.
And then it goes on tour for a year.
Oh, okay.
So it's going on tour for 12 months, all over the country, Ireland, which will be amazing. But
you've done that.
I've done a year, and I loved bringing Basil to the stage.
Yeah.
It was an incredible experience. I think I lost about 1.5 stones doing it, so I think I've just put that back on again. So
right.
I was quite happy to hand over the Basil mantle, hand over the tash.
How did you deal with the physical element of, because it was an incredibly physical show, 8 times a week. I've seen it, and you are literally throwing yourself around the stage, being hit over the head, doing the Ministry of Funny Walks, all of those things that we associate with. Did you have to do something to make sure that you weren't pulling a hamstring or were physically capable of doing it?
I mean, I've always been a runner, so I hoped I had like a baseline fitness, which was good. But I had to do like stretches and yoga and stuff, and I was hammering.
Because you're getting a bit older now.
But I mean, I would finish act 1. Jump in, because I'd be sweating, jump in the shower, have a quick shower in the interval, down like a protein shake, have some rehydration salts, get back out there, do act 2, and come back and do the same.
Do they have physios backstage or anything like that too?
They can do,
It's almost athletic what you're doing on a stage. So
you kind of have to be,
How do you keep the runners on the road? In some ways,
as you do anything you can. You sauna. I did a bit of cryotherapy as well.
Okay,
which was quite good fun.
You're looking very young, can I just say, Adam, with that. After you'd done 300 shows, kind of, was there a parting message from John and the team in relation to what you'd done?
They were delighted. So our last week, they decided to they filmed it basically. So similar to the NT Live shows that you see.
Oh, is it recorded now?
So they've recorded it, and they are, I'm not speaking out of turn, but they are hoping, I think, to sell it to a streamer, and then it will be available.
Okay, I hope so, because I mean, then that widens the audience even further.
Totally.
Probably at the right time when all the stage shows have been done.
Yeah.
I was going to say I hope they filmed it, because it's you've created a magic moment there.
Well,
that's
the
and so
plan.
to not have it recorded would be a real shame, wouldn't it?
So it has been recorded, and the plan is that it will be released
one day.
I think I was saying to you, John called me the other week when I just landed
Yeah.
from Brazil, and deeply jet lagged, and said that he'd been editing it, and
Yes.
he was delighted with it.
Right.
So yeah, so I think they were all absolutely delighted, and we are looking at making a second stage show. So that's the plan. Is obviously this one will go on tour for a year.
Yeah.
Finish end of next summer, I think.
Right.
And the plan is that we'll have number 2 ready to go on stage.
Will that be another 3 episodes?
Yeah. So that's the plan.
Will
at
you
the
do
moment.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, so I was going to ask
Absolutely.
you what's
Yeah, yeah.
next, right? Because this is such a high profile role, which all of us who know you were so delighted.
Yeah.
But also we also understand how difficult this is.
Yeah.
So what do you do with this? What's the inertia and the momentum that
So the
follows
plan is
this?
that, so a few weeks after maybe a month after we'd opened, John called me and said, look, do you think there'd be any scope in doing a second stage
Yeah,
show? And
yeah.
by that point, we'd be meeting people at stage door and they'd be saying, are you going to do any more episodes? Is there going to be any more?
I hadn't thought about that. That's brilliant, really.
Yeah. So that's what I've been working on with the past, I guess, 4 or 5 months is
You're hearing it here first, everyone.
is adapting another stage show.
Yes.
So that's the plan. John and I are going to meet over the summer and
Yeah.
continue to work on that with an eye to it being performed, I suppose, somewhere down the line.
So we should get another one back into the West End.
Fingers crossed.
And you'll play that role.
I mean, if they want me to do it, then yeah, absolutely.
I can't imagine they wouldn't, right?
Absolutely.
After 300 spectacular shows. Impossible question coming. Out of all of this, is there one absolutely endearing memory for you or lesson for you that kind of is front of mind?
Gosh, a memory or lesson?
Yeah. What's kind of that sweetest memory for you? We're like, wow, boy, have I just lived.
I mean, it's hard to beat that opening night, as I described. Just
Yeah.
the pin drop silence before everyone just exploding.
What
and
was the pin
rising.
drop about? Was it almost people just had to process what we just seen?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I genuinely think it was. I think it was people had to breathe. People had to take in. There was an intake of, and then they could erupt. It was astonishing, and it was.
Did it bring a tear to the eye? I mean,
There were certainly some tears on stage. Yeah, it was incredible. And indeed, the last night. The funny thing about the last night, because I think 8 of the cast are continuing,
Yeah.
but for over half of us, that was our last show at the West End.
Yeah.
And you do that funny thing as you're doing the last show. You're thinking, oh, this is the last time I'm saying these lines. And for the first 20 minutes of the show,
Yeah.
I had that thought. It's like, this is the last time I'm saying. But you realize actually then you can't enjoy the show because you're not in the show.
Yeah.
You're
in your head.
You're in your head.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I just had to get rid of that and then enjoy the show. And it was just like another normal show until you get to the end and you're running out to bow. And I was looking around and there was cast members crying and stuff because you
Yeah.
go through a lot
Of
together
course.
as
what a
a
lived
company.
experience. Shared
Yeah.
lived experience.
And a lesson, gosh, I think it's probably just about bravery and about taking risks and backing yourself.
Yeah.
And because again, this could well have fallen on its face. This could have
Just
been a
remind
disaster.
ourselves it didn't, Adam.
Yeah,
but you're right.
it
You're right.
absolutely
Things
could
can
have
always
done.
go in multiple directions.
But if we brought it together and we believed in
Yeah.
in ourselves. Yeah. But I mean, I was thinking about a leadership kind of lesson, and it's always, I think, that leading by example, and from an acting perspective, it's just simply just get out there, say the lines in the right order.
I think
bump
when
into
you
the
watch or
furniture.
hear this back, Adam, there have been multiple leadership lessons, which is why I love this,
Yeah.
this podcast, because I did think so much rich learning comes out just of a curious conversation.
Yeah.
You're a superstar for coming back into the studio. You know this studio anyway.
I love it.
And doing this. And I'm really excited because it sounds like there's another project on the go. So we can have another conversation.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be back in the West End. We can have another conversation. And I will just take it from there, I think, really.
Love
but
it.
you probably deserve a break, don't you? Or you just had one?
I've just come back from Brazil, so yeah.
Well, now you can have a break in the sunshine here.
Open to offers of work.
Yeah, you heard it here first as well. The life of an actor
Indeed.
is never a dull one. Adam, you're an absolute superstar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam.
All right. Join us again next week for more curiosity and insight with the Leadership Enigma. We'd love to hear your comments on today's show as well as suggestions for future topics and guests. Get in touch with me on LinkedIn or visit us at www.leadersenigma.com. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe on all your major podcast platforms and on our dedicated YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining the community.